everyone. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. So, if you're watching on YouTube, if you could please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can always follow us there. Every like and share and subscribe can help our channel to be seen by many more Stargate fans. So, we really appreciate it. And then we also have all of our socials listed up on the screen right now if you wish to follow us there. Okay, thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Bye. And to all the Stargate fans out there, we would love to hear from you and chat with you on our show. So if you're interested in doing that, please reach out to us via any of our social media platforms or email.
I thought it would be cool to talk. Last time we talked a little bit about the characters and the dynamics in Stargate Universe, but I thought it would be interesting to maybe talk a little bit about the plot and setting. And I know we talked about, hey, should we maybe discuss a specific episode? But I think due to the nature of Stargate Universe, it's actually very difficult to discuss a specific episode, at least at the point we're both in the show. So I thought, what if we just take a look at like the first, say, 6 episodes, which are kind of all focused on a similar thing, and look at it as a collective and go over like the setting and the plot and the pacing and how the narrative develops throughout the series. And so I guess we could maybe just start with sharing a little bit of our impressions on what happens in the first 6 episodes, specifically considering the pacing and the movement of the plot.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just kind of looking through little clips to remind myself fully what everything was about. So, roughly in a nutshell, correct me if I'm wrong on this. So, for episode 1 through 6, so you have air part 1, part 2, part 3. So that's like the 3-parter that really kind of gets everything going, I think, in terms of the series, right? And then you have episode 4, which is darkness, which is about when they're losing power, I believe, and they're trying to figure out what to do. Then episode 5 is light, which is where they have to do that lottery system because they think that the ship is failing, I believe, or it's going to collide with something. Something was going to happen that they feel that everyone will die unless they can get off of the ship, but they don't have enough resources to get everyone off the ship and onto like a safer place or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly. And so that's what that one's about. And then episode 6 is water, which is when they have no their water supply is dwindling down and they need to find clean and drinkable water for the crew, is what I believe roughly that goes up to. So yeah, so I guess like I think like me and you were saying like before we hit record as well, is that like with Stargate Universe, sometimes it all kind of blurs into one, like in terms of like it's a continuous storyline all the time, right? So it's like I think you know, like with the first 3 episodes, I think I'd said this in a previous thing where we were talking about when we started Universe, I feel like it was a bit hard for me to kind of get into the story, I think, because everything was quite frantic and different from watching Atlantis, and it was a lot of just trying but it worked for like what was going on. And then once it kind of I mean, I think basically the whole arc of it so far up to see episode 6 is, you know, they're still just trying to figure out how to survive on this ship and how to get home, right? So that's like the main thing, and the main thing that will probably continue is my guess. There will always be that part in the storyline of the whole point is they're trying to get home, right? So yeah, I mean, I don't know what else you want me to kind of go into, but
yeah, no, that's a good, I think that's a good.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, what were we gonna say?
Oh, I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that's like it's like a good, I was just thinking like our initial first impressions. And I think, I mean, it's interesting to bring that up because like that's also when we first started talking about this, I was trying to think, okay, what happens and also how is the conflict kind of introduced. And if you look
Mhm.
at like SG1, the conflict is introduced in the beginning, basically when the gate is open again, and suddenly there's
Mhm.
this, threat out there. But at the same time, it's sort of a different threat that forces them to kind of like go outwards, and it's also not
Mhm.
really immediate. Like, and in Atlantis is something similar. Like they're exploring, they're trying to learn more, also to protect themselves from the threat, as well as just to learn more about their origins. And they kind of result in something, an enemy happening that then becomes a more immediate threat. But I think what's
Mhm.
interesting, like I would say when I think about, okay, the first 6 episodes is very fascinating, is they introduce the threat immediately, which is actually much more urgent in a way, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so in universe, everything's much more urgent. I mean, the first 3 episodes, like, is called air, and they're trying to figure out how to get enough air, right? And
Yeah.
I think in a way, it's very interesting because you have these episodes where I think a lot less actually happens, but
Mhm.
the suspense is much higher. And so I think, okay,
Right.
what is in the narrative? Like, what's a little bit different? It is, I found immediately right off the bat watching Universe that everything felt a lot more urgent in a very like, life or death way. Obviously, like I mean,
Yeah.
I think SG1 Atlantis were also life or death, but not in the same urgency. And I don't know if
Yeah.
you felt that probably a little bit as well, like in.
Definitely. I mean, I think as you're like, I think you have really like much better ways of explaining things than I do. And so sometimes, like when we're talking, like it actually helps clear my head a little bit to realize like how I'm feeling about like an episode or about it overall. And I think like that how you were saying how it actually is l less going on, so in a sense, it's kind of going more slowly, right? But like at the same time, very urgent is a perfect way of putting it because it's kind of like I think that's why it's so hard for me to watch more than one episode at a time. Um, because it's this constant feeling of like something needs to happen, something needs to happen, like it feels very dark and gloomy, and like it's like this constant like thing of like trying to figure out the next awful thing,
Mhm.
which with like Atlantis and SG1, again, there's always like things going on there, but it's done in more of like an individual kind of thing per episode, usually. And even when the storyline carries on, there's still something different or multiple different things going on in those episodes, I think, even like between characters. Whereas, kind of like with this, at least so far, it seems like it's always about that one topic of how are they going to fix it. Like they might go a little bit into the sidelines, a little bit of like, and I don't even think it was in episode 6, I think it was in episode 7 when they have the stones, right? Like where there it's like the thing we were talking about the last time with like the guy with his wife and everything, like that kind of those that episode, even though we're not talking about episode 7, I'm just mentioning it because I feel like that episode was the one that kind of went more into individuals like relationships a
Yes.
little bit more, whereas 1 through 6 I think are more of like, here's the problem, who's going to help fix it. And it kind of goes between the dynamics of, a lot of times I'm talking with Rush and different things of trying to figure out how to fix the problem, how are they going to find the problem, and ultimately then what happens to fix that by the end of that episode if something does happen, or is that issue still lingering on and you're still like frantic figuring out what the heck are they going to do, which is kind of what I think the first 3 episodes did really well. It was so
Hmm.
chaotic. I mean, if I remember correctly, like, doesn't it? I mean, I could be wrong on this, but doesn't it actually start off initially and then it goes back in time, like before this happened? But initially, it shows everyone getting tossed in through the through the Stargate, where they're all just getting tossed into the ship and they're all hitting
Hmm.
into each other and hurting each other and falling into each other, and it's very chaotic.
Hmm.
They're just getting ping ponged out of the out of the Stargate. And like I think if I remember correctly, potentially that's how it starts, and then it
Hmm.
goes back into why that happened. So immediately it's that sense of urgency that you mentioned. Like immediately you're like, oh my God, what is happening? Oh my God, this is dark. Ah, this is scary. What's going on? And so like it kind of like sticks with that underlying feeling, I think, probably throughout. I would
Yeah.
imagine it's kind of like the always that underlying like urgency, I would imagine, is throughout both seasons, is my guess, but I guess I shall
Yeah.
see.
That's interesting too, because I totally forgot about that in the first episode, what you mentioned, that it sort of
Oh yeah.
starts with how they're kind of being thrown, and then it does the flashbacks of how it happened. I absolutely forgot
Yeah.
about that, which I think is also a little bit telling about the way that they introduce everything. Because you're right, that like they don't even kind of start, and then by the end of the episode, it's urgent. Kind of like, I mean,
Yeah.
in Atlantis, it was kind of like this. Like they started and then it became much more urgent, but the beginning of it was sort of, oh, we're going on this great adventure, like, whereas
Yeah.
in universe is like the minute the first thing that happens is that, and then you go back to. So I think that's an interesting observation. Um,
Yeah.
I also think it's kind of interesting that you mentioned it's hard for you to watch more than one episode because I find something kind of opposite that
Hmm.
but it's like it's harder for me to be in the mood to watch one episode because it's so heavy. And so you kind of have to
Hmm.
be in this mindset of being able to like receive something heavy. So I think whereas like
Yeah.
SG1 probably or Atlantis at any time really I could pop it on and watch it if like
Yeah.
but like with the universe it's like it feels like it's somehow more of a commitment like a
Hmm.
engagement commitment, but like when I watch one it's actually much harder for me to stop like if I watch one because
Hmm.
it leaves you kind of in this, oh, what's happening next, like. And
Yeah.
also I kind of somewhat feel like part of that is because so little happens that you kind of want something to
Yeah.
be happening. It's kind of like I don't know if you get these, but like I get these stupid advertisements all the time on like Instagram. And it's like these sort of short drama things. And it's always like 1 or 2 minute clips. And it's from like something where, some girl is dating this guy and he's breaking up with her because she's no good anymore. But then like she's secretly like this billionaire or something. And it's like this whole argument about whether or not she actually is a billionaire and new stuff keeps happening. But like this situation never gets resolved. But in the end, like nothing's actually happening. It's just keeping you watching
Hmm.
because of this weird tension of, oh, are they going to reveal that she's a billionaire? And when she finally reveals it, nobody believes her. And so it kind of keeps this weird tension that's kind of actually like kind of a nothing. It keeps it going. And I
Hmm.
think they do this to kind of keep people watching. And I feel like something very, it's like a device taken from, shows like maybe Universe, where, I mean, in the end, when you think about it, like what really happened in the first few episodes is actually not so much, but at the end, you're like, okay, now what's going to happen next? And so I think it's this way of setting it up in a different way and kind of
Yeah.
keeping the like action to a minimum that like
Yeah.
pushes you. But I
I
think I
mean,
thought it was very interesting that you said you can only watch one.
yeah, I think it's just because I have a strong sensitivity to when I watch dark and gloomy things, which is weird because there have been times where I've watched, and I've mentioned this before, because I watch all sorts of different types of shows where I've watched things that are quite far more extreme and gloom and doom and dark and whatever. And I have watched multiple, but for some reason, I don't know why. I just feel like I'm kind of spent by the end of it. Like it's kind of like there is that curiosity there, definitely. Like I'm definitely curious, like what's going to resolve, what's going to happen. But at the same time, then I just kind of feel like getting onto like a different vibe, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, what I was thinking as you were talking actually is I remember uh in one of the like Facebook pages that people follow Stargate stuff. I remember someone once saying like about Universe, they're just like, oh well, if you want like a soap opera, like that's Universe. Like they act like it was like a soap opera, which I don't necessarily agree with. But I can see if I don't know if you ever watched soap operas when you were like growing up, but like I did, and like it is kind of like that in terms of like these storylines for characters of things that either are secrets. Usually in soap operas, it's like someone has a deep, dark secret or whatever. And then it just gets dragged out and dragged out and dragged out. And all these other things happen. And you keep wondering, well, are they going to find out about this person, or is this secret going to be found out? And it gets really like the story really gets like stretched to the limit. And not that I feel like Universe does that in a bad way. Like I feel like in a soap opera that's kind of like in a ridiculous way. Like it's sometimes just kind of silly, you know. And I'm not into soap operas now, but when I was like middle school or whatever, there was a few that I remember like I liked watching. Um, but like it does kind of feel like it does really stretch out the storyline so that it's all kind of like connected, like you were saying. Like it never fully feels like it stops, like whatever's going on, it just kind of continues and continues and continues. So maybe
Mhm.
that's why that person kind of felt like it was kind of the equivalent of a soap opera. Plus, you know, with this, it's like we did mention last time, like the relationship dynamics are very soap opera like, compared to what SG1 or Atlantis have in theirs. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I mean, I actually think a soap opera is kind of a good analogy because in a
Mm-hmm.
soap opera, when you really think about it, like nothing actually happens. I mean, overall, like you have maybe 3 months where what happens is somebody slept with somebody and then like they they don't find out for like 3 months, but it's all about the tension of that for the 3 months,
Yeah.
you says.
Yeah.
And I think this is very very similar in a way. Is kind of this kind of, and I actually like I agree with you. I don't think it's like a negative. I wouldn't say this in a negative way. I think it's more like a different kind of storytelling. I think the one
Mm-hmm.
thing that is probably extremely different in universe, like in terms of the narrative and the storytelling, that I think where I would say, okay, this is vastly different. It's not just paced differently, is that there's this kind of lack of humor relief where I
Mm-hmm.
think in Stargate and Atlantis, even in the like the darkest moments, like maybe if there were some extremely late Atlantis episodes that explored sort of a darkness the whole way through, I think in the very last season. But even some of the more intense Atlantis episodes, I think still had this kind of nuggets of humor of the characters.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing where I think in universe they kind of maintain that suspense and there isn't really any divots of like the humor relief, kind of like how
Yeah.
there was in SG1 Atlantis. And I don't know if that is that a good thing, bad thing, I don't really know. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't finished the whole show, so maybe it kind of comes in through season 2, I don't know. um
Yeah.
but yeah, that's the one thing I noticed, is that it's kind of keeps maintaining. And there's like a
Yeah.
little bit of it with, I think, with Eli, but not quite really. I don't know how
Yeah.
you see that.
That's exactly how I see it. Like I was going to mention that Eli is kind of almost like slightly that comic humorous relief at sometimes, but not really. Like I think his character is kind of like if I think of it in terms of light and darkness, I think of everything being this dark glob of like crap that's always continually happening. And he's like the light in that dark moment. But it's like I feel like no one else participates in that, if that makes sense. So then it makes it not
Yeah.
really a thing. So it's kind of like he might say like a funny little comment, or he might do something kind of nerdy or awkward. And so for that split second, it's a little bit of that, but nowhere near what you usually get in like SG1 or Atlantis. Um, so yeah, I thought I was gonna say something else, but I forget now. If it comes back to me, I'll tell you.
But it's interesting. That's actually a really good point that you mentioned, that nobody else participates in it, because it made me think, oh yeah, that's right. Like especially early SG1, when you think about, O'Neill's sarcasm and his little quips, it's also how the rest of the cast responded to that. Like, Daniel
Yeah.
would always kind of get in little like beef with him, or sometimes, like he'd say something and Carter would kind of like, react in this way, or Teal'c would, raise an eyebrow, as they said.
Yeah. Yeah.
later
Yeah,
on. And I think
exactly.
they kind of played into those kind of dynamics. And I think that's where like I feel like you mentioned this to me too, like, oh, even O'Neill seems kind of darker in this. And I think like the O'Neill character when he appears in the show, it's like he's always the general. So
Hmm.
from a character standpoint, it makes sense. But then it's also he doesn't really appear in those moments where he has an opportunity, or they don't really put the opportunity there that he can kind of be a little bit like sarcastic or something, which I feel like um maybe that's something they're trying to do, is like to kind of draw that out of the show. I don't know. It would be interesting to
Yeah.
find out, but
It's interesting because I feel like probably everything is very intentional. That's just my
mhm.
feeling, is I feel like everything about the show was probably well thought out and intentional, but it gives the impression that you're just like, oh, well, was that intentional, like, or did it just kind of get molded that way? But I have a feeling that probably everything about like not having quite as much like humor in the same way, having the storylines go in the way that we're describing that we feel that they go. Like, I feel like that's all very, very intentional. And so I kind of feel like while I personally really, really, really miss the humorous aspects, like I think that's the one thing that would make me feel like binging this show, is if it at least had that comic relief every now and then. However, I say that without seeing how that could actually work in a show like this. And part of me has a feeling like I would think it would work. And then if I actually saw it in action, it would probably feel so strange. And then I'd be like, well, why is that there? This doesn't make sense. So I have a feeling they probably thought all of that out and figured, it wasn't the right place for that kind of thing, is my guess. But like, there's the part of it's like I go back and forth with how I think I feel about it, because there's the part of me that strongly misses that. Like, that's what I love about Stargate. That's like what I can even remember about like our conversations when we first started doing this podcast. One of the things we both specifically mentioned, and I don't even remember what episode it was that we were doing, it was really like early on, that both of us specifically mentioned how we loved how there was that perfect combination of humor and seriousness, and how it helped the dark moments not feel so dark and you didn't get like overwhelmed by it. Like I remember saying
Mhm.
that with myself, I didn't feel like I would get overwhelmed with like something, because like if I remember correctly in SG1, I think it was it season 6 that took like kind of a little bit more of a gloomy, more serious turn. And I remember telling you like it was like harder for me to fully always like binge that one quite as much, even though I loved that season, because everything did take a much darker turn. And I was kind of like at a relief when like finally there'd be like an episode that added a bit of humor and lightness to it. So I just feel like with Universe, it's like as viewers, we almost get trapped in feeling how they feel. And I think that's what's quite extreme
Mhm.
for me, but really fascinating at the same time, because you're like,
Mhm.
dang, we're like feeling how they would feel like when in this like real life serious situation. It's not a funny thing, like we're kind of going along that adventure with those characters and feeling that. So it's kind of weird, it's kind of interesting and weird. It's all
Yeah.
I know how to explain.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's very true. I mean, I think it also kind of go like it's weird how shows, I guess, in a way, parallel the world, because in 1997, when SG1 first came out, everything was super actually optimistic. Like it was like the
Mhm.
boom of the internet, like everything was going up and up and up. And then I think in Atlantis, it was still kind of early 2000s. So, I mean, things were a little bit like tenser with everything that was going on in the early 2000s, but there was still this like hint
Mhm.
of optimism. But I think in 2009, I guess, is when Universe came out. And this was like right after the financial crash. And so I think this was kind
Mm.
of, I mean, I don't know if you feel the same, but I feel like when I think of, oh, 2008 and 2009, like overall, they have this feeling of like heavy, like they feel heavy. And then I feel like when you
Mm.
get to 2012 and 2013, like I feel like this sort of things start to feel lighter. And then until you get to like the late 2010s, and then things feel more heavy. Um, but I feel like that a little bit. And I think when you look at like shows from the time period, it's interesting how many shows there were that were like all drama, drama, and tension, tension. And so I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit product of that. I know Atlantis started to go in that direction toward the end too. Um, but I agree with you, like when you mentioned that it's such a weird thing because you think, yeah, like that would be so cool. But then when you really think about the setting, it doesn't like I can't imagine a situation where you would put that kind of humor in a
Yeah.
way that other characters would kind of bounce off of it.
Yeah.
Um, and I also kind of appreciate sometimes that there's this really hyper realistic aspect. Like when they mention, like, people not feeling well because of caffeine. And, you have this scene, I can't remember which episode it is, but where Rush is just completely having a breakdown. And,
Hmm.
you find out that it's, well, okay, there's also this other situation. He was smoking and he was drinking coffee all the time, and now he can't do any of that. And yeah, that's right. People will react that way. Whereas I think,
Yeah.
the SG1 and Atlantis were kind of the opposite of like realism in the sense of
Yeah.
those kinds of things. And so I think it was kind of an interesting aspect to sort of highlight. And then you see, and then you start thinking, okay, well, yeah, people are behaving really kind of, weird and nasty. And I think that sometimes like a criticism people have is that most
Yeah.
of the characters are very unlikable. Like, but when you think about what's actually going on, it's like, oh, okay, maybe they, you would act like that. I don't know how I would act if I was like trapped in a ship. Maybe I would turn into complete like meanie pants. I don't know. Like it's so easy to say, oh, well, if I was trapped on a ship, I would be so nice to everybody and I wouldn't like hoard supplies or be mean. But then like when you're in this situation, it's totally different, right?
Oh yeah, of course. And like what I was thinking as you were saying all of that too is like since you've never seen like Universe until now, right? It's 2025. Do you think that how you're viewing the show now, do you feel like you would like it quite as much back in the time when it came out, which was what did you say, 2009? The reason I ask that is because it just got me thinking like I feel like as shows progress, there's a lot of shows now that have that are I mean, there's a lot of different types of shows. There's a ton of different types of shows, but I feel like now in 2025, we have shows that are more like movies. Like we have things that are really dark and gloomy or sometimes that are like horror stories or all these things that I feel like everything throughout the years has gotten more and more and more intense. And so
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like there was a comment once someone mentioned on the Stargate Fans United page on Facebook that they says that universe was ahead of its time. Like Stargate Universe was ahead of its time. And that's why some people now are going back and rewatching it and actually really liking it, whereas before they did not. And so I wonder, do you think that that plays a factor in how you viewed it? I know it would partially be a guess, I suppose, because you never did see it in the time it came out. But I'm curious if you agree or disagree that with things gradually intensifying, if you feel the same as what I just said, like, do you feel like that plays a role in how people perceive the show?
I'm not sure I can like speak how other people are, but I can say one thing I think is maybe different is like my age. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I truly think like back then it was more of a personal like short-mindedness thing of kind of, seeing like a little bit and going, oh, this isn't Stargate, and then kind of turning it off. And so I think,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I agree, like I think people don't appreciate how kind of forward thinking that show was, like in a way. But um I think probably, at least for me, a larger part of it is just that I feel like having learned more in general in life, I'm more open to things that are like I'm more open to things in general. And so I think it's more
Mm-hmm.
going into it more with an open mind. Like, and I mean, oddly, I think something that prepares a little bit of that for that is a show like Doctor Who, which I've seen. And um because something interesting about that show is that every so many years, um, actually the main character changes into something completely different. And
Hmm.
also the character that he is traveling around with, or she is traveling around with, I mean, I actually don't know who all the newest doctors are, but the characters that's accompanying the doctor, the companion, is also always changing. And so I
Hmm.
think watching that show kind of like is a little bit what kind of maybe would change my feelings about that, because I think before, whereas I was maybe like getting more attached to things kind of staying the same, that I am now more open to how something different can actually be really nice. And I
Hmm.
think that's also like I didn't watch Atlantis when it first came out either. And I
Hmm.
think it took me, I guess I watched Atlantis also like after it was canceled. I mean, I watched it for the first time in 2011. And I think it was a very similar thing. I was thinking, oh, it's Stargate, like it's SG-1, it's these characters and everything. And so it was very kind of, and then at some point, I think because I had a composition instructor that said he loves Stargate Atlantis, and that was his favorite. And I remember you also like named Taylor, and you were really into Atlantis. And so I thought, oh, okay, I give Atlantis a try. And I did that summer, and I went,
Hmm.
okay, this is actually really good. I like these characters also. And
Hmm.
so I think, but I think Universe, it has this such differentness about it that I think it's so easy to approach it and go, this is not Stargate, and then turn it off. And so I think while
Hmm.
there's some aspects that are really forward thinking, especially with the storytelling, that it's not episodic, is really kind of
Hmm.
some shows didn't get like this till like the 2010s, where it was really made for binge watching. And I think that's the
Hmm.
aspect of it. This is so forward, but I really think there's this, at least for me, this personal aspect where I've learned that something new and different can also be very good, even if like
Yeah.
like I think maybe I was a bit closed off to that back then.
Mm.
I don't
Yeah,
know if
that's
you
interesting. Yeah.
I don't know if you
What?
experienced anything I don't know how your personal experience was, because you did watch Universe.
Yeah, I
And
did watch Universe, and I can't remember if it was right when it came out, but I can't remember the exact time frames of everything, but I definitely did watch Universe. I was excited that they're coming out with the Stargate, so another Stargate series, so it must have been close to the time that it came out. I did really love it. I
mhm,
was at that point where I was kind of like sick of the whole like concept of like the what is it, 4 or 5 person team
mhm,
and they go out on the adventures, and I was just like, they better not just repeat that again. Like that's all I was thinking, I remember. And then I did really love it. And so I think I actually, it's kind of funny though, because I feel like I probably did binge watch Universe back then, but now I'm in like a different state of mind with it all. Like it's been a struggle for me to watch more than one episode at a time. It's been a struggle for me to fully get into it, and I think it's all because I've become increasingly sensitive to what I consume, and meaning like what I'm watching, you know? Um, and while I can watch some really crazy, intense things that are, far more intense than Universe, um, I get very easily like emotionally affected by it. And so I think that's the main thing that has made me be like, oh, it feels so heavy. I don't feel like watching it. I really miss the other stuff. And that by no means reflects or means that I don't enjoy the story and enjoy the characters. It's not that at all. It's just really heavy. And so
mhm,
it's interesting because I kind of feel like before we got to Universe, I just had this memory of being like loving Universe and excited for you to get started on it too, and seeing how it was quite different. And now that I'm on Universe, I'm not loving it as much as I anticipated I was going to. And it's making me sad that like I'm not feeling like watching it all the time, because like with like I feel like this watch through was interesting for me because it was the second time I rewatched SG1, the second
Mhm.
time I rewatched Atlantis, and it was the only time I knew that there was an order to watch those two as Atlantis came into the
Mhm.
picture, and kind of so we watched it in like what would be the correct order. So then I kind of connected with where the storylines kind of
Mhm.
um came together. And then I just felt like Atlantis was cut short. I felt like there should have been more. And so it's like going from that emotion of that show to
Yeah.
then going straight into Universe, I think was what was hard for me, because like I was so excited to see Universe, and I do like it, but it's just so different. So
Mhm.
different. And so it's hard for me to like I'm just like hoping and waiting for the moment as I'm watching it where I feel like I'm hoping I want to like then I know this is the opposite of you. Like you says you like watching more than one episode. Like I'm hoping I reach that point where I feel like doing that, because right now I'm not at that point. Um so yeah, hopefully that kind of answered. I'm just kind of babbling now, but
I mean, it's interesting what you said though, because I think one big difference between Universe and Atlantis is that in Atlantis you have that overlap. And I really
Mhm.
appreciate that, because at the end, like when Atlantis is only Atlantis, you start getting sad. You're like, oh, I do miss SG1. But then they have quite a lot of crossover episodes in the fourth and fifth season
Yeah.
with people from, and there are crossover in Universe. I mean, we've seen like O'Neill is there, and there's kind of these references to Earth. They have the communication stones, so you do have this. And I know, like, even I haven't seen all of it yet. I know there's people that come back because I've just seen their character profile and what the last episode appearance is in. So I think that aspect is interesting. I also wonder, because I find, and I don't know if like this is the same situation for you, like if I'm using like my brain a lot, like, or if I have to like do a lot of like heavy mental like labor, like let's say I'm really composing something hardcore, then it's really harder for me at the end of the day to watch like a Universe or something like this, because,
Yes. Yep.
and I don't know if maybe that's part of it, because like, I mean, last week I was in training camp and it was just, there's no way that I was at the
Yeah.
night like completely just brain dead. But the day that I
I
really
think
watched
yeah.
a lot, it was like I wasn't really, it was between projects. I wasn't doing anything, kind of had a headache, didn't want to start anything. So maybe that's something that,
I think you're spot on with that. Yeah. I think if I am experiencing stuff in my regular daily life that is, for me personally, if I'm having like a stressful day, I want to watch something that's going to make me feel better. So I will gravitate towards something that's more lighthearted. So I can't do that with Universe. So that's part of it. Like if you're going through things that are tough. Um and then sometimes like it's I think you're exactly spot on with that. I feel like I have to be in the right kind of mindset. Like if it's just kind of like an average day that nothing bad has happened and nothing good has happened, it's just kind of there, then I probably would feel like chilling and watching that and stuff. But I think lately there's been a lot of stressful things going on. So I think that that could have played a huge part of me not feeling like watching it. So you're spot on with that.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of, it's interesting, right? Because like SG1, I mean, I will sometimes put on like, now that I've watched it a few times, like I'll have SG1 on sometimes when I'm doing like the end work of a project, like just putting notations
Yeah.
and stuff. But I do notice that like, every once in a while you'll just hear some sarcastic comment, you'll like laugh, even when you're, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I would feel like with Universe that I could necessarily do that. I think it has like a higher bingeable like aspect to it, but I think it has a less high rewatchability. Like when I think about what actually happened in the
Yeah.
story, I don't know. Like maybe if I rewatch it again, I'll go, oh, okay, I saw this thing I didn't see there. And but like I feel like in Atlantis, there's a lot of things that you like, there's little things you don't notice because you're paying attention to the story or you want to know what happens. And there's like little character moments that are just enjoyable to watch, just to watch them. And
Mhm.
I'm not sure, because I haven't done it yet, if that's the case with the Universe. If like, but I get the impression like, oh, I'm not sure I would want to like watch that again, because now I know what happens, and knowing what happens
Yeah.
is like the interesting part, like in that sense.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, I don't really remember all what happens in universe, like to be honest. So I feel like it's like me watching a new show. But I do know that people that have commented on like Facebook groups that have talked about it, I have seen multiple comments that have mentioned that um season one for them was a bit difficult to get through, but once they got to season two, they started to really like the show. So I'm really curious to see how I'm going to feel by the time season two comes along, because I do have memories of like, I don't fully remember what was going on in like the episodes, but I have memories of being like really into it from when I watched
mhm.
it the first time. So my guess is maybe that was from season two, is my guess. I'm not really sure. Or maybe just at that time I was more open to kind of feeling like watching something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I definitely, like I've always says, I do like the show. I'm truly am a bit surprised that I'm having such a difficult time with it this time around, but it does make sense now that we've kind of talked through it. Like if it's something like within myself that it's like, you can't go to as like a pick me up kind of show, so it's like that would make
Yeah.
sense.
Well, sometimes like your brain is honestly like, I don't know if you find this, but like your brain is just too tired to consume that kind of media, or like too like
Yeah.
unable to consume that. And like it's like, okay, I can like play them. It's like kind of like video games. I mean, I had this experience like when I was in like really heavily doing school, like I could not play like a very intense video game in the middle of like the semester when I was super busy. It just wasn't happening,
Yeah.
even if it's a game I really loved. But like during the semester break, I could sit down for like 2, 3 days and like, play a really intense video game. But like during the semester, I remember I would only play like, Big Brain Academy and like Pokemon or something for a few minutes every day, like just to like
Yeah.
kind of chill out. And I couldn't do the like more intense heavy games. And
Yeah.
I thought that like it's probably very similar. Like but that's why it's interesting, because I have this with Universe, I have this like consumption pattern of like watching either nothing or like a bunch of episodes at once.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
but I did hear a lot of people say that they love season two so much, and like once it gets good then it suddenly like ends. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. And I guess too, it's kind of like with shows, it's kind of like the equivalent of like music, I think sometimes. Like when people are just chilling listening to music, people will sometimes listen to music for very specific reasons. It's like if someone's like a preteen that has went through, or a teenager that has went through some like horrible heartbreak, they might go and listen to Taylor Swift or like,
yeah,
and
totally,
then
totally.
it's like, or if someone's like, really like in rage mode about something, they might go listen to like, I don't know if you know who Sky Daddy is, but she's pretty awesome. They might listen to her, or like, so it's just kind of like there's different music that suits different emotional needs, I think. And I think that can also trickle into when people watch shows, even though the show is about, other people. I think people watch things to have them feel a certain way, and sometimes they're just not wanting to feel that way. So and
Yeah,
maybe
no,
that's not
totally.
for everyone, but that is how it is for me, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's how it is for me. Some people like have a really like this amazing ability. Like I can't watch really hardcore zombie movies. It's not something I can
Hmm.
do. Like I've never been able to do it.
Hmm.
And some people can, but like if you put like a 28 Days Later or something on, I just get so affected by it. I cannot watch it. Like it
Yeah.
makes me some like physically feel, and same with like there's this weird like any kind of weird psychological or emotional things that end up wrong. Like I remember one time I watched City of Angels and like I couldn't function. I was like, I'm never watching that again. That was like, I know like there's people that love that movie, but the ending was like so much tore me apart. Like it like completely destroyed
Yeah.
me. I could never watch it again. It took me like 2 days to recover from that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like I can. That's what's weird is I'm like very sensitive to stuff that I watch, but I can watch some pretty screwed up stuff. Like in the past, I used to love watching like The Walking Dead and everything with all the zombie stuff.
Oh,
Now
really?
yeah, but now honestly, now I wouldn't. Like, so I feel like I have changed throughout the years in terms of like my sensitivity towards stuff, because I'll also watch like murder documentaries sometimes still. Like it's rare, but like I have watched it a few times. But then the feeling I get afterwards where I just feel so awful, then I'm just like, oh yeah, that's why. That's why I don't usually watch this. So or if it's like I do actually like certain psychological thrillers, but then again, at the end of it, if like nothing's resolved itself, I feel horrible. And then I have to just like get rid of that awful feeling somehow. So it's kind of like I kind of do it to myself, man. But so like I get what you mean though with certain things. I feel like there's probably certain shows too and movies from the past that I probably loved at the time that now if I watched it, it would affect me in a way. Like I remember liking City of Angels, but now I probably wouldn't. So yeah, it's interesting
I
how
mean,
different things.
it's not so psychological. It's just like sad, and it's probably not even
It's
that
very
sad. It's just like
sad. Yeah.
it's like a little sad, but like to me, like I don't know. And I was like 20 years ago too, but I still have this strong memory of like, oh my God, that was
Yeah.
traumatizing. But at the same time, like
Yeah.
I think a movie that I watched when I was younger that like totally traumatized me, and then I watched as older that it was somehow was My Own Private Idaho. I remember like when I watched it younger, I like it really messed me up. Like I was maybe
I don't
13,
think I
14.
saw that.
It's with the River Phoenix and Keanu Reeves. It's like
Oh
they're
wait, then I must have seen it. You must have shared that with
like
me.
you must, I know it, like probably forced you to watch at some point. But they're like hustlers living in Portland. And like what I couldn't handle is like Keanu Reeves like left him and then started dating this girl and basically abandoned him. And then like I was like, I couldn't watch it. It like traumatized me. But like when I watched it when I was older, I somehow like it didn't like I was kind of like, oh, well, good for him getting away from that guy. He's like douchebag anyways. Like he
Yeah.
was not treating him right. Um,
Yeah, I think
but
too, like depending on where you are in your own life and experiences that you've experienced, then that kind of goes into when you watch things, understanding it in a different light. Where at like 12, 13, whatever you know, whatever age you were when you watched it the first time, like um
yeah,
because I think you must have shared that with me because you had that massive obsession with River Phoenix.
I must
Um
have. Yeah.
and you shared everything like with me in terms of his movies and stuff. So I probably just blocked it out of my memory in all
You're
honesty. I
like,
probably was
nope,
just like,
that
what is
movie.
this that I'm watching?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. But yeah, like I'm curious when I think about it. I guess now that you mention it, I wonder how if I would have actually watched Universe at the time, how I would have felt about the different relationships. Because it's interesting, you mentioned both times like Colonel Young kind of like rubbed you the wrong way. And it's
Yeah.
funny because in Stargate, I feel differently about certain characters and certain relationships between characters as I like watch the second time around. And it's funny because I wonder like how would I feel about Chloe and Lieutenant Scott if I watched it, like back in those times. Because maybe I wouldn't have had this kind of like, oh my gosh, they're making Eli like the nerd and being friend zoned. It probably wouldn't have even occurred to me. And I would have been like, oh, it's so cute that
Yeah.
she's with Scott. But like,
Yeah.
like after all this, it's like, oh, come on, why is Eli friend zone? Like, and they kind of set it up in the first episode, like they're gonna date and like they're gonna be like a will they won't they thing. And then like they sideline you with that, and you're just like, oh my God, the heartbreak.
Yeah. Yeah. I think certain like societal things too that like are kind of accepted in one part of life, and then like as things progress and people kind of see things in a different way, it's kind of like it makes you question things like um that's even like in a funny way, like with like SG1. I think both of us have like said like certain characters that we like at the first time found like attractive or whatever, and then how it changed to like different characters, or just like
Yep.
what the hell. And it was just kind of funny. So it's just like weird like how it's like you have like it's kind of cool though if you think about it, like watching things back at different ages and you have a different life view by that point, and like have experienced different things, and then so you see the interactions differently. It's almost like watching a whole new show.
Oh, totally. The one, like, it's kind of off topic, but the one that really sticks out to me in this regard is The Devil Wears Prada, because I
Ah,
watched that once when I was much younger, and I remember thinking I really felt bad for her boyfriend because she was changing so much, and like he seemed like such a sweet guy. And then watching it as like older, I'm like, oh my God, he's so toxic. He's telling her what to do. Like, what is this? If she wants to like, wear makeup and fancy clothes, like let her. And it's so
yeah.
funny
Oh
that like
gosh.
I don't know if you've seen that as a like an adult. Like I think I saw it as a teenager the first time, but that one was
Yeah, I've
totally
just
like,
seen it the once as a teenager, so that would be interesting to rewatch and see how I feel
yeah,
about that. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. So like I mean, and I guess like universe, when I think about it, it's like right at the cusp of where a lot of things were kind of dramatic in that sense. And I think that
Hmm.
when I think of Stargate, like SG-1 Atlantis, there's always these like some teasing of relationship dynamics, but it was never really at the foreground. But I think like in
Hmm.
universe, it is, and I think it almost kind of has to be. Like a lot of people complain about it, but when you think about the setting and where they are and what they're doing, they're all trapped in a ship. So it's like very
Yeah.
natural that everything will be much more personal rather than something else.
Yeah.
I don't know. At
Yeah.
least that's how I kind of
No,
see
that
it.
does make sense. That does make sense because I mean, they're in like really extreme circumstances. They can't get off the ship. Like they're literally just stuck there. And yes, like there's times when they go like onto a planet, like a few of them do or whatever, but like ultimately they're all stuck there. And if you're in like this constant like life or death kind of mindset, you're going to go to other people for comfort because what else
Yep.
can you do? And then some of your ways of going towards people for comfort will probably be toxic because you're in a very toxic situation. So it kind of all makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm just like, I'm really surprised to see if anyone like hits on Rush, anyone in because I would imagine like if I was in I mean, again, you don't know what you would do, but like if I was on the ship, like the first thing I'd probably do, because, you feel like this, like I would probably immediately gravitate towards Rush, like in that way.
Really? Oh my God.
Yes, I'm sure. Like,
That's so
that's
funny.
because you have this sort of like when you're trapped and you're kind of hostage in a way, and that's like a coping mechanism. And so I think like he is the one in charge, and so I think to cope I would be like super into Rush. Like I'm sure if I was on that ship I would be like
That's so funny. That's so funny. No, no, no. I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense for you, Alyssa. Like,
like
it makes sense. Yeah.
but I mean like if you think about it, like I'm surprised, like say the one that was originally dating Scott, like I'm surprised she hasn't like just slipped into Rush's quarters after hours or something like that.
Don't know. I
Or
just
something.
like I feel like Rush is so like unapproachable and kind of like just always seems mad. Like he just seems like I think I guess it depends what people go for. I guess I'll just put it that way. Like I just feel like if you're going towards that intellect and I don't know, like then sure.
I mean,
Um
it's a really good question for our audience. If you were trapped on the Destiny, like who do you think you would go
like
for?
do you
What
mean
kind
like romantically who people would go towards?
I mean, it can be anything. I mean, like in this sense, it could be romantically. Like, yeah, maybe you romantically, but maybe you think it's romantic, but really it's some kind of protective mechanism. But like, it could be also who would you go to for friendship? Who would you make enemies with? What kind of
Yeah.
things do you think you would do that you wouldn't normally do? Like, what behavior would you have that, like maybe you would you think, okay, yeah, maybe I would be that person that hoards all the MREs, like,
That's a really good question. Yeah,
yeah.
what would you do that you wouldn't normally do? Yeah,
Yeah.
people should tell us what they think they would do. I mean, that to me seems like it would take a bit of thinking to actually answer for myself. I would have
Yeah.
no clue. But
Yeah.
um and in real life I would want to be friends with Eli, and on the ship I would want to be friends with Eli. So I'd probably gravitate towards him, not in like a weird way, but like in a friendship way, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I could see myself doing that too, like, but not, I mean, I feel like, especially if I knew him and like he was getting snubbed by Chloe, I would probably also gravitate towards him in that other way because I would like feel badly and I'd be like, I can't believe this. Like,
As horrible as this sounds, like if I was like of the same age as this person, like if I was younger, I would probably like gravitate towards Lieutenant Scott, just be, and I know how toxic that is, but I like if I was in that age range and in that situation, I would probably be one of the toxic ones. I would gravitate towards it.
you'd be like, bye, Eli. Your friend zone. Yeah, but I mean, I understand too because it's like a similar thing to Rush, right? It's like the same thing. He's like going to protect anybody. Like I would trust,
Yeah.
I would, if I was like stranded somewhere like completely by myself, I would 100% trust Lieutenant Scott. Like he would make me home alive.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's so I would trust him with my life. And so I could 100% see that if you're in a situation where you are severely life threatened, who will help you? Lieutenant Scott. He can survive anything. It's like going
Yeah.
somewhere with Silk. You will end up alive, you know.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
actually think, I mean, I don't think that's super toxic. It was only super toxic in the sense that, you know, she kind of like led Eli on and then they kind of got together without him like breaking up with his
Yeah.
other girlfriend or something. But you know, like had it like happened organically without that, like of course okay, whatever. Like that's totally normal.
Yeah.
And so if you were
Yeah.
on that ship, I mean, I would think it would be weird if you gravitated towards Colonel Young, but
Oh.
since you have this kind of like,
Visceral reaction.
yeah, but I know why. I mean, and now you know why, like because of the character's kind of backstory, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just also like, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. Just his yeah.
But it's okay. You
So
can
yeah, I
have
mean, I
Scott
think
and
we
I will go find Rush.
yeah, I think that's so funny. But yeah, so all of those questions that you just asked, which I don't fully remember all of them, it'd be awesome if people commented on those because it'd be kind of funny to kind of hear how people think they would be. Like if they were one of the
Totally.
people on the ship, who would they gravitate towards either romantically or friendship wise, or you know, what kind of crazy toxic thing would they do if they were stuck on that ship. So
Yeah, totally. What awful thing would you do? Tell us. Tell us.
yes.